Hi there, this is Alex, and today I have another art book to take a look at. This one is about Claude Monet. This book was edited by Charles Stuckey. It has 132 color and 119 black and white illustrations. The world of Claude Monet, his break with stultifying conventions of academic art, his revolutionary ideas about light and color, his reverence for nature, his acute perceptions of the modern world, is best expressed in the hundreds of paintings he produced over a long career. From the youthful years in Le Havre in Paris to the final years at his beloved Giverny, from the joyous discoveries of early Impressionism through poverty and the bitter struggle for recognition to fame and honor in old age, there are always the luminous paintings. Let's see what's inside. Acknowledgements page. Looks like this might be a collection of essays. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, like critiques, criticisms, I guess. Oh, and here we have another chronology like we had in the Turner book. So that's pretty cool. This one is a little bit more extensive, but a good reference to have. There's a picture of Monet in his studio with the famous water lilies paintings. Very distinctive figure. That's pretty. So he passed away in 1926 at 86 years old. It's a pretty old age for someone in the 20s, I think. Road in the Forest of Fontainebleau, 1864. The light in this is really amazing, isn't it? And the shapes. It's pretty geometric for a natural landscape. This section's really cool. The shadows. La Pointe de la Hèvre at low tide. 1864. This is at the Kimball Art Museum in Fort Worth. I've been there a number of times. It's really cool. I think that the last time I was there, which was several years ago, they were having an Impressionism show. But that's really neat that they have this is so cool. Like, the composition of it, everything kind of points to this left of center horizon line. I just think it's really cool. That's like very sophisticated art criticism, Alex, but doesn't it look like cinematic? Like these are our characters that we're following. God, it's just really stunning, and it manages to include, the sea, the low tide, the beach, and then this cliffside, and the dramatic clouds. I don't have a strong memory of seeing this at the Kimball, but next time I go, I'm definitely going to have to take a look. This piece is from 1865. It's a little, maybe a German short-haired pointer. Any dog nerds out there? Figure's very central here. Tall, slim figure. And then the dappled light behind him with this umbrella. Really cool use of shapes here. I just like the aspect ratio of some of his pieces. But I think, I'm not sure if this was the case with this piece, but I know that when Monet began to paint larger canvases, like this one is 164 inches tall. I think that one of his famous large canvases ended up being partially destroyed, and so it was broken up into these like interesting segments. And I guess in that case in particular, it wasn't intentional cropping, but it makes it look very like unique. It just creates these shapes. Just the cropping creates these new shapes that maybe weren't there before. And it just looks very cutting edge. Luncheon on the grass. Left fragment. Fragment. To really watch my accent. Okay. This is Camille, or The Woman in the Green Dress, 1866. That's some pretty incredible rendering of silk or whatever this fabric is. Look at the light on that. Obviously the star of the show in this painting. If I can turn off my light, give you a better. Just turn off my overhead light so you can see that. Wow. It's a really beautiful, dramatic piece. Okay. Let's read a little bit of the introduction. As surely as Monet's canvases satisfy a human need to have the world's sensory richness interpreted artistically, they arouse curiosity about the man himself and his lifelong dedication to painting the visual world with uncanny truth. They capture his pride, his determination, his gentleness, and even his despair. The finest standard accounts of Monet have been consulted extensively. John Rawald's classic History of Impressionism, first published in 1946 by the Museum of Modern Art in New York, and Daniel Wildenstein's extraordinary multi-volume Claude Monet Biographie Catalogue Raisonné, Lausanne in Paris, which includes Monet's complete correspondence. We have included a number of newspaper reviews of the exhibitions in which Monet presented his paintings to the public. Yet we have tried here neither to evaluate the shifting theories concerning his art, a subject already treated exhaustively in Stephen L. Levine's Monet and His Critics, nor to analyze Monet's achievement. This retrospective account is for the most part designed to present Monet without hindsight, as he was presented in his own lifetime. Only two influential modern essays have been included to exemplify how Monet's art has taken on the proportions of a modern legend. This book is pretty old, so excuse any dust. This essay is by Jean Renoir, Claude Renoir, my father, from 1958. Their convictions did not hinder Monet, Sisley, Basile, and Renoir from regular attendance at the school run by old Claire. Claire, is that right? After all, the cult of nature was not incompatible with the study of drawing. Monet amazed old Claire. Everyone, in fact, was impressed, not only with his virtuosity, but also with his worldly manner. When he first came to this school, the other students were jealous of his well-dressed appearance and nicknamed him the dandy. My father, who was always so modest in his choice of clothes, was delighted with the spectacular elegance of his new friend. He was penniless, and he wore shirts with lace at the cuffs. Monet began by refusing to use the stool which was assigned to him when he first entered the classroom, only fit for milking cows. As a rule, the students painted standing up, but they had the right to a stool if they wanted it. Until then, it had never occurred to anyone to bother about these stools one way or the other. Good old Claire had the habit of getting up on the little platform. Claire, I feel like I'm pronouncing that. The little platform on which the model posed and giving advice from that vantage point to this or that novice. One day he found Monet installed in his place. Wow, very bold. Monet's explanation was that he needed to get nearer to the model in order to examine the texture of the skin. Yeah. Except for his friends in the group, he looked upon the rest of his fellow students as a sort of anonymous crowd, just a lot of grocer's assistants, he called them. To a rather pretty, if somewhat vulgar girl who started to make advances to him, he said, "Oh yeah, I can't say that part." Yeah, Renoir and Monet were apparently good friends. This looks like maybe one of the first pieces written about him in a paper. These works mark, we believe, his debut, and they lack the finesse that comes only after lengthy study, but the sensitivity to color harmony in the play of related tones, the feeling for values, the startling appearance of the whole, an audacious manner of seeing things and of commanding the observer's attention. These are virtues which Monsieur Monet already possesses to a high degree. As we passed along, his mouth of the Seine brought us to an abrupt halt, and we shall never forget it. Wow. That's some really, really wild praise for an artist. If it stops someone in their tracks and if they won't forget it, that's like more than you could ever ask for. As a result, we shall follow the future efforts of this sincere seascapist with great interest from now on. So it looks like this is the piece that Mance was referring to, Mouth of the Senate Enfleur. This is a black and white reproduction, but it's still very powerful. I've forgotten a lot of my art history knowledge, to be frank, so I'm definitely not an expert. But from what I recall, at this point in time, when the Impressionists were putting on their initial shows, the prevailing style was very sleek, refined, and representational. So form rendered exactly as it appears, so without liberty for emotion or whatever. So the Impressionists really did cause a stir, and so we can when we think about that, what was popular and accepted at the time in the art world, and we look at some of these pieces, it puts it into perspective, because a lot of these pieces, and we'll see later on, maybe we've seen them so many times that they don't seem, that spectacular to our eyes. But at the time, we have to remember, there really hadn't been painting like this yet. So just the drama of it and the movement and the color and the freedom, it's pretty new at the time and still is fresh. Some different pieces from, I'm assuming, Parisian journals, newspapers. Émile Zola, L'Événement, The Realists at the Salon, 1866. Kind of wild to think of what was happening in the US at the time and how all these moments of history happening at the same time. I always found that very trippy. It's probably stupid, but I always found that so trippy. Okay, so this is called the Bodmer Oak Fontainebleau Forest from 1865. And Émile Zola was a controversial novelist and journalist who came to Paris in 1858 from Aix-en-Provence and urged his closest boyhood friend Cézanne, another famous artist, to join him there. Zola would be dismissed from L'Événement for his firebrand support of Monet, published serially as part of the same Salon review included here. So let's read a little bit about this from this firebrand Zola. I confess the painting that held my attention longest is Camille by Monsieur Monet. Here was a lively, energetic canvas. I had just finished wandering through those cold and empty rooms, sick and tired of not finding any new talent, when I spotted this young woman, her long dress trailing behind, plunging into the wall as if there were a hole there. That's some really cool art writing, in my opinion. You guys remember we looked at this painting a bit earlier, but this was the one. I always like to kind of refresh myself when I'm reading about the painting, but this was the one with the amazing gown. This is Camille. You cannot imagine what a relief it is to admire a little when you're sick of splitting your sides with laughter and shrugging your shoulders. Okay. I don't know Monsieur Monet, and I don't even think I've ever seen a single canvas of his. Yet I almost feel like one of his old friends, and that's because his painting speaks whole volumes to me about energy and truth. Wow, cool. I'm just gonna kind of breeze through some of his other statements because it's a little bit intense. Yeah, talking about how you can really sense the texture of the gown, which is true. It's apparent. Looks like Monsieur Monet got a lot of really good reviews. I'm sure among some outrage. Okay, so Camille was done in 4 days. Wow. Wow, that's pretty crazy. Like, a painting like that done in 4 days is pretty crazy. Piece from 1914, so we're jumping ahead quite a bit. This is probably more of a reflective piece. Latouche, color merchant, Rue Lafayette, counted Pissarro, Monet, and their friends among his clients. In late afternoons, people would sometimes go by to chat in his boutique. One day in 1865 or 1866, Daumier came in. Pointing to a painting in the window, he said, "Hey, Latouche, take that garbage out of your window. It's disgraceful." And then he left. Bye. The picture was Monet's Le Jardin de l'Enfant. The young Monet was present and was shocked. A few days later, Latouche and Monet, looking out the window, saw Diaz shaking his head acquiescently and stopped on the sidewalk in front of the very same painting. Latouche asked him in, introduced everyone, and Diaz exclaimed, "Very good, young man. You will go far." Qui Diaz? Who's Diaz? Is it Daumier? I'm confused. Anyway, in other circumstances, Daubigny as well made known his proposal. These must be like well-known artists or art critics that I'm just not aware of. But how much more Monet would have preferred to receive the endorsements of Daumier or of Corot instead of these. Corot, however, who was passionately admired by those new painters, did not at all understand the importance of their innovations. Yeah, that's pretty common in art and creativity, I think. Guillaume, I think, at first friendly to them and who notably worked in the company of Cézanne, had settled down and had been admitted into the salon. Corot, all excited, said to Volant, who had advised and backed the candidate, "Well, this little Antonin saved at last. When he was with that dirty gang, I thought he was lost forever." On the other hand, toward 1866, Courbet was encouraging Monet and, contrary to his renowned stinginess, insisted on making money available to the beginner. So this one here, I'm sure there'll be a color plate of this, I would imagine, later on, because this is considered one of Monet's first attempts at painting like natural sunlight, I think. But it was considered sort of like a beginning of that effort, because people have said it's like a little bit stiff. I would never go so far as to criticize Monet, but that's just what I've read. And I think that this man, what was his name? I don't remember, but this is one of the painters that ran with this gang. I often think like how crazy it is that works by some of the most famous artists are held in residences, like private residences. Like that's so wild to me. And I know that often collectors will loan their pieces to museums for shows, and that's always pretty exciting because it's an opportunity to see a piece you wouldn't otherwise have an opportunity to see. But isn't that crazy to think of this in someone's home? Okay, another Zola piece. move in because I want to see some color pieces. Okay. This piece is Women in the Garden. And this is another sort of attempt to represent sunlight, like the dapple sunlight, natural sunlight, which from what I understand it wasn't very common to paint using natural light, especially bright sunlight, because whenever you have that kind of bright sun coming down, it not only creates these bright shapes, but also these dark shadows it's difficult to include the two in one piece and have it look whole. So it wasn't very common. But there's some very beautiful spots in this. Look at that. Look at that hair. Wow. It's a garden piece. It's very pretty. Over here we have another seascape. Very rough. Getting into a little bit more of like the loose paint application. Look at that, that's cool. He has another piece and I'm sure it's in here, but it's from the harbor. Well, it's a representation of the harbor at La Havre. And there's a similar bright light here, and then this kind of reflection on the water. I also really like this, what I'm assuming is a rain cloud. It's neat. Oh, this must be the painting that Daumier thought should be removed from the window and put in the garbage. Kind. This is Le Jardin d'un Enfant from 1867. I'm assuming this is Paris. Is this Sacré-Cœur? Crowded Park. And over here is Terrace at Saint-Andrés, 1867. Okay, this is On the Seine at Bennecourt, 1868. This is at the Art Institute of Chicago, which has a lot of really, really great paintings. It's just like, it's so beautiful how in so few strokes they can really represent not only the form, but like the feeling of this scene, you know? Kind of like a casual boat scene and not too stuffy. And then this, like, how cool is this reflection of this house that we don't see? Over here we have the stormy sea at Etretat, 1868. And yet again, reminds me of Broadchurch. I think my problem is being an American. There isn't, at least like on the East Coast, maybe on the West Coast, there are things like this. But so every time I see something like this, I think, oh, like in Broadchurch. But like most other places in the world, they have these cliffs running into the ocean. And I'm just so impressed by it. It's embarrassing. Okay, here's another luncheon scene. Pretty uncharacteristic of Monet, but very beautiful. Like, look at this. Again, the light, the fabric. This is really cool with this veil. Chair here. Oh, wow. Look at this one, guys. You really get that feeling. I don't know if it snows where you are, but whenever it snows, especially heavy, and you go out in the morning and it hasn't really been plowed and no one's been out, it's this like silence, just this like quiet, or all you hear is the snow kind of softly falling from branches. You just get that feeling. That's really pretty. I mean, pretty is reductive for a masterwork, but you know what I mean. We've addressed the fact that I'm not an art critic. Okay. The Hotel des Roches Noires at Trouville, 1870. This facade is really neat. Oh, I remember having to do complicated facades in school. And you get so lost in the dormers and like the windows and the doors and the steps and the decor, you know. I love how he managed to like show clearly that this is a fancy hotel facade, probably even a recognizable one to the people of this time in this area, but without belaboring every little arch. You know, it's just the suggestion. It's just so easy, but I'm sure not at all easy to actually represent, you know. And this, I love this, like how the sky transitions from this deep, this lapis lazuli kind of blue into this soft blue. And here's where the folks are. This flags, like this composition's cool. Okay, this might be like Amsterdam, Netherlands, I don't know. Wow, that's cool. I think I should rename this series to Wow. That's cool. But that is cool. This is kind of like Edward Hopper-ish with these like very straight geometric shapes, and I have a vague memory, and I don't know if this is right, but I kind of vaguely remember in my art history classes learning that there's some similarities. There's some similarities between Impressionist works and Japanese prints, and you can kind of see that, like in Japanese block prints. From what I remember, there are these like big shapes, like geometric shapes, coming up against sort of more natural forms. You kind of see that here. Like if you were to boost the contrast on this, you could definitely see the shapes here, like this piece, you know, this piece. I always thought that was really cool, and I'm just very partial to that look. I think that's such a cool look. Okay, and here we have Springtime from 1872. More dappled light, very soft, and this nice little vignette kind of framing her. And again, with this composition, very intentional. Okay, I don't want to take too much time, so I'm going to try to go forward to some of the more famous pieces. Okay, so this is definitely a very famous piece. I really thought I could get a lot further without stopping, but this is called Impression Sunrise, and I think that Monet named this piece Impression Sunrise, and when it was shown at this not a salon but gallery opening, a particularly salty critic took this and ran with it and kind of started calling this group of artists the Impressionists, but he really meant it as an insult, and then the group just kind of, I guess, embraced it. But how about this piece? Like, I mean, seriously, like, you can't see my face, but I'm doing a look. Like, this is a really insane painting. Like, my God, like, this painting is crazy. I just can't even, like, just this color, like, it's this, I feel like this would be so hard to do, because it's something that's really hard to avoid in traditional painting. So painting with oil, it's very hard to avoid muddiness. So when your colors become basically looking like muddy and they don't have any of their brightness or their the sharpness or their clarity, he manages to like incorporate that like muddiness that it just makes you feel like pre-dawn, like things that a photo wouldn't capture. That's what really is the magic of art, when it captures both like visually things that a photo wouldn't capture, but also a feeling that a photo wouldn't capture. Not that photography can't capture, you know, beautiful visuals or feelings. They absolutely can, and in many ways more powerful than art. But this is just a beautiful piece with this bright sun and then this reflection here. It's just so evocative and striking, you know. So it's fitting that it was how the term impressionist was coined. Oh, and I guess this was the Impressionist exhibition, 1874, on Boulevard des Capucines. Yeah, see how like people did not get it. Okay, this guy says, I don't know if they quote this man who said this, but he said, "Here's an impression if I don't say so myself. Only tell me what these countless little black licking marks are at the bottom of the painting." Maybe this isn't the one he was looking at. Okay. He was looking at Boulevard des Capucines. But it's similar here, you know, there's like just these suggestions of lines. That was just not common at the time. But as we move forward in art history, and I'll try to get a book of Toulouse-Lautrec because he's like one of my favorite artists. But you'll see that this becomes even more common as we move forward, like just suggestions. Not everything has to be, you know, perfectly rendered. But you can see this guy kind of trolling on Monet. Okay. Let's keep going. We're running out of time. I don't want to make these too long because I don't want to bore you. But maybe what we'll do is cut it off here, and then we'll come back with another tomorrow, because I don't want to rush through, you know, the haystacks or the lilies. Like, I want to give them their due, but I do think like reading a little bit about the background and the movement is interesting, so I don't want to leave it out. But let's stop here and we'll meet again, talk about the rest.